Alright everyone, today I'm going to show you another Hungarian classic, and this time this is something I have actually made at work as well, so you might have seen this before. However, I'm going to do it in a more traditional way today, and I'm preparing Vadas. Vadas is basically it used to be made from game. So this is back in the old days. People used to eat a lot more game, so I'm going to use some venison. However, in these days this dish is mostly prepared with beef or even with pork. So for that I'm going to use some pork as well as the venison, and normally this is a joint of meat cooked with vegetables. Then you basically liquidize the vegetables to make it into a nice sauce. So for that I'm going to use the pork, but I'm actually going to serve it with the venison. Of course I'm going to still eat the pork as well at some point, and it's going to be served with what should I call it, dumplings. Let's call it dumplings, which is going to be made from bread. Normally you use stale bread to make this, which I don't have, so I just use some ciabattas. It's going to be perfect anyway. And I'm going to try to make the whole dish with just one pan to save on washing. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So ingredients I have, as I said, I've got some venison and I've got some pork, which is a fatty piece of pork. Lovely. Vegetables, I've got carrots, parsnips, and in Hungary we wouldn't use parsnips, we would use parsley root, which is similar but it's not as sweet as parsnips, but is going to work perfectly. I've got some celery and onions and garlic. I've got a bouquet garni of sage, rosemary and thyme, and some parsnips, onions if I haven't mentioned. Seasoning is going to be very simple. Use some marjoram, some bay leaves if I can find it. I see bay leaves. I'll use some Worcestershire sauce. Of course someone's going to correct me that that's not how you pronounce it, but that's my take on it. A bit of tomato puree. I use a bit of veggie bouillon as well to have a rich flavor. Dijon mustard, bit of double cream and sour cream. Traditionally it's sour cream, however I'm going to add some double cream as well. I think it's going to help with the sauce. And I've got some demerara sugar as well. So to begin with, I should begin with the meat, and what I haven't mentioned that I'm actually going to prepare it in the pressure cooker to make this faster than normal, because it can take up to 2 hours to prepare this, but with the pressure cooker it's gonna be much shorter time. Okay, actually I'm going to start with the dumplings. Now to make the dumplings, first of all I have to turn these ciabattas into croutons. So that's what I'm gonna start with. So I'll take the longest because it still has to cool down as well. And all I'm gonna do is just literally make little croutons. Okay, at this point I'm not going to season this with anything because I'm going to season the dumplings later on. So all I'm going to do is just going to bake them, dry them out. Let's start to prepare the bodosh itself. And I'm using beef dripping. But of course you can use any fat that you prefer. I said this before and I still stand by that. I think that animal fats which are less processed are better for you than all sorts of oils. Of course I do use oil and I quite like olive oil, but my opinion is that to cook, the more natural the fat, the better for you. I think. I might be wrong. Okay, so we have a nice shoulder joint, and the venison I'm just going to prepare just before plating, when everything is ready, because venison steaks especially don't take much time. The recommendation is 7 to 12 minutes. I don't think it takes that long. It's just like preparing any other steak. And the reason I have the pork is because traditionally you would cook the joint in the cooking liquid, and I want the flavor from the meat in the sauce, but I don't want to overcook the venison, which is the reason why I'm going to cook it separately later on. Just going to remove the butcher string because it's got no use for me. This is one whole piece of meat. Again, no use. Okay guys, the beef dripping is extremely hot, so the meat goes in. Alright guys, so as you can see, pork has a nice color now. At this point I'm going to add the onions and the carrots, but I'm not going to slice anything too small because there is no point, because I'm going to blend it anyway. this point I'm going to add the sugar as well. So I'm not going wild, I'm just going to add about a tablespoon of brown sugar and let's say a teaspoon of tomato puree. 1, 2, okay, tablespoon of tomato puree and brown sugar. And just let it caramelize. It's all very important for the flavor of the dish. Don't skip this step. And I'm going to add some salt as well at this point. Already smells fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Alright guys, this is all it takes. You can see that the vegetables are nicely caramelized. It's just wonderful. At this point I'm going to add water. I'm going to add the bouquet garni, which is not traditional in Hungary. We don't use thyme and sage that much. We do, but not in this dish, but I think it's going to add absolutely beautiful flavors to this. I'm going to reinsert the pork and add a bit more seasoning. This is salt and mainly pepper. So pepper, Worcestershire sauce, which I don't think it's traditional either, but I've been living in the UK for 20 years, so for me it's traditional. Dijon mustard, just a couple of teaspoons for now, later we can adjust. Of course, marjoram, one of my favorite herbs ever, and this is about a teaspoon I'm using, and bay leaves, just 3 bay leaves, that's more than enough. Okay, I'm going to bring this to a boil, add maybe a bit more water to it. So the water is almost covering the meat, and maybe at this point I'm going to add 1 vegetable jelly as well. And you can skip this, of course, if you have to or if you want to, but it's just going to be a richer flavor. So I'll bring this to the boil, then add the lid and cook it under pressure for like 20 minutes. And that's all it's going to need, that piece of pork, I think. And then I'm going to finish the sauce and make the dumplings, and of course the breadcrumbs have been in the oven for good 10-15 minutes and not ready yet, but getting there. Alright, so sauce is boiling. Just going to check the seasoning. and seasoning is absolutely wonderful. I'm just going to add a bit more mustard, and I'm going to add a bit of kuharek. So if you are not familiar with this one, this is basically a vegetable seasoning with a bit of MSG added to it, and it absolutely elevates the flavors, but don't abuse it, because if you use too much of it, it basically ruins the meal. But in moderation, it's absolutely fantastic. A bit more Worcestershire sauce. Worcester sauce, whatever. Okay, guys, at this point I'm going to put the lid on and put the dish under pressure. Hopefully it's not going to take longer than 20-30 minutes, and then I'm going to prepare the dumplings, hopefully in the same liquid, so we are saving on washing up, because normally we would cook the dumplings in a separate dish in just salted water, but I was thinking if I remove the meat and all the vegetables, I can save on washing up and just prepare the dumplings in the same liquid. It's going to be more flavorful as well, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'll be back in a second. The croutons are ready. Just going to let them to cool down, and then we're gonna make the dumplings. And for that I'm going to add parsley, couple of eggs, bit of salt, and plain flour, and I might have to adjust the egg to flour ratio. We'll see later on. I'm going to add one more egg for now. And another one. Okay, let it to rest and release all the pressure from here. Okay, I'm just going to add a bit more flour. And a bit of water as well. Okay, the dish is no longer under pressure, so I can open it and remove the meat and the vegetables. Okay, to make the dumplings, you don't actually need the liquid to boil, just want to simmer. This looks a bit dry to me, so I'm going to add a bit more flour and water at this point. So we are basically looking at the consistency of Spätzle. Yeah, that's about it. And that's perfect. Alright, so all there is left to do is to form little dumplings and cook them in the liquid. And as I said before, traditionally this is cooked in a separate bowl of boiling water. However, I want to cook this in the liquid that I cooked the pork in, so we're gonna have a lot of extra flavor. And one of the main reasons I wanted to share this recipe with you is because what I see nowadays, everybody is focusing on rice and potatoes, but there are so many other options to go with, which we seem to forget what people used to eat in the past. Alright, so all the dumplings are in. I'm just going to increase the heat slightly to cook the dumplings, and then once the dumplings are cooked, I'm going to add the vegetables and blend the sauce. Okay, just salt and pepper on the venison. And I love venison. I used to sell a lot of venison steaks in my previous work, and I always tried to push alternative options, and venison and wild boar are definitely two of those options that people don't actually eat often enough. I think venison and wild boar taste absolutely amazing, and more people should try them. Okay, just salt and pepper on the venison. Let's see the dumplings, and let's call them dumplings. We don't actually call them dumplings in Hungary, but I don't have a better way to describe them. These are going to be ready very soon. Okay, the dumplings should be done by this point, and you can see they changed size quite a bit. I think this is something I should try at work actually, because these dumplings are very similar to stuffing balls, what people are familiar with in the UK. Of course they are different, and I've just added the garlic that was missing before, but I think it's similar enough, so that's maybe something I'll try in the future. Okay, so I'm going to blend the sauce, and I'm using this liquidizer. If you have a hand blender, of course that also works, but this gives better results. Just a bit too much. Alright guys, so sauce is pretty much done. Now traditionally we would thicken this sauce with a mixture of sour cream and flour. You know what? No, I'm not gonna touch this sauce. This sauce is perfect. Oh wow, all these flavors. Alright, venison steaks are done, and I'm just going to rest them. And whenever I rest steaks at home, I normally do it this way. So there is still heat coming from the top, but the steaks don't get the intense heat from the bottom. But whatever heat there is in the pan, in the resting process, that heat is going to help to basically cook the steak to a perfect medium rare. And hopefully I can demonstrate it to you once I slice the venison steaks. And the sauce is absolutely beautiful. And as I said before, we would normally thicken this with a slurry of flour and sour cream, but I don't think this needs any thickening at all. This is thick enough already and is absolutely beautiful. The dumplings, again, whew, this is something you should try. Alright guys, the sauce is ready. It's been reduced ever so slightly. The venison has been rested, and I'm just going to add the juice to the sauce. Absolutely amazing. All right, now of course we have our dumplings, so a couple of dumplings. And again, I know this is a bit of work, but I highly, very highly recommend to try this. Okay, let's see the venison. Of course, venison shouldn't be overcooked because it's very there's no fat, and this is perfect. Hey guys, look at this. This venison has been rested. It's absolutely beautiful. Of course, you can enjoy this with alternative meats. I could have just served this dish with the pork, and we will enjoy that pork, of course, but today I wanted to make it special. That's why I prepared it with the venison, and this sauce is what makes everything perfect. Oh man, this is going to be amazing. And I'm just going to add some sour cream to this. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I shall see you next time. Thanks for watching.